everybody. Okay, so I watched the last videos and I realized that my voice was extremely quiet. So I'm going to talk a lot louder to make sure that you guys can actually hear me and that I don't sound like some little weird person. So today's video is going to be about the MCAT and my experience with it and what I learned from taking the MCAT. So to start off is that I took a class. I took the Princeton review class, so I would actually drive, take the class every day for about 2 hours, and then come home, study for about like 3-4 hours. And then I would just I don't know, I would probably chill a little after. I always took a Sunday off because I was doing volunteer work, so I was not studying on Sundays most of the time. Then I also would do the online materials that the company provided. They would have like a homework sheet, and it would tell you like, you need to get these assignments done by this time, you need to do this by that time. So then I also used exam crackers as a supplement, so if I felt like I didn't understand something completely, I would go to the exam crackers book and then read up on there. And then for like the verbal, I did not use the Princeton review method at all. I used the exam crackers method entirely, and I used their 101 passages to help practice closer to the exam. So I took a class for 9 weeks and then had a 3-week gap from when the class ended to when I took the test. And I do think that maybe that might have been too much time. I think the recommended time between your test and when you like stop taking the class is about 2 weeks. Then that's for like summer. So this is like all I did. Also I should mention, I did this during the summer. My sophomore year, the summer of my sophomore year, I just spent studying for the MCAT. It was the most brutal thing. All my friends went to study abroad that year. I was so lonely, but I mean, it's better than having to study for it during the year. That's like absolutely terrible. So anywho, side rant. So yeah, I had 3 weeks, and I would take the AMC practice exams, like one a day until the exam. And I would review, I would go over the exams, answers the next day after I took the test. And that was extremely painful too, because I was taking it under test conditions. I wouldn't talk to my family while taking the test, and I wore the same clothes. And another key thing to remember is that you want to replicate the test settings. So you I wore the same clothes every time I took the test. It was probably disgusting, but that's what I did. I also would try to eat the same breakfast. I would try and take the test at the same time that I was going to actually take the test, so wake up when I would expect to wake up. And test day, I got there early. I got there super early. My test was at 1. Probably got there a little 11. I don't know. Whenever they say that you can come, I would just go immediately, because I wanted to have a seat where I was in the back by myself and would just have one person sitting next to me, so that there weren't a lot of people coming by, bothering me, distracting me. Because, I don't know, I don't want that many people near me when I'm taking that serious of a test. They provide headphones. I personally did not expect to use them because I've heard they're disgusting. And it depends on your testing center. All the testing centers are different. But I ended up using the headphones there. They were big, they cancel out noise. For some people, they actually hurt your head because they're so small. So I would just bring little earplugs just in case, if you're the kind of person who would prefer silence. I personally do. So in the end, I had breathing problems through the 3 weeks leading up to my test. I could not breathe properly. I was so nervous. I don't think that's a common occurrence, but it did happen for me just because I was so scared that I did not want to retake this test again. And at one point I just told myself, you know what? You can just not take the test. It's fine. What are you gonna do? So that actually comforted me. So if you're an actually super, super panicky person about tests, just do anything to comfort yourself. And also make sure you don't spend all of your time studying for the MCAT. because you'll go insane. Like, it is a brutal thing. I'm not gonna lie to you people. Like, I hated it. It was terrible, but I would spend time with my friends too. I would go to lunch with them sometimes. I would talk to people during the breaks at class. And, you know, you can't let yourself go insane. So I do recommend taking some time to, like, just, you know, relax. I went to the gym every morning. That I think was super helpful. A problem for me is that I was not eating as well as I should have during this time, which I'll explain in another video why that was the case. But make sure you're eating properly. Exercise, I definitely think, is essential. I went to 2 hours of the gym every single day, so I wasn't like letting my body like die. I went to volunteer work, I had dinner. I do think keeping some of your life is important, but at the end of the day, I think some people don't take it as seriously. This is a huge part of your application. So the MCAT is like an essential thing. I do think that you should dedicate this time. Like, don't take it as a joke. So study hard for it, and personal recommendation, study for it over the summer. I don't see how it's possible for people to study while doing their extracurriculars and at school. I don't see how that's possible to give it the time that it deserves. So I would definitely recommend sophomore summer. That's when I did it. I think that was the best time. I had just taken all my prereqs. You definitely have to finish most of your prereqs, but like, I took the engineering versions of the prereqs, and I don't think I needed to. I think the class was sufficient, but I definitely do think it might help just because you will have been exposed to it. Now my personal thoughts on the test, I'm probably not allowed to say like what was on the test, but I think I can probably say like ordering. So the first one was the physical sciences, and most of my friends thought that was the hardest part. I did too. I don't know if that's because that's the first part of the exam and you're just like so anxious that you're like, oh my god, like this is the most awful part. But it might just be because that's the first section you actually get exposed to. I don't know. So I didn't like that section, but that was also the first section. Then I went to verbal. Verbal, there's supposed to be like a killer passage. I don't know if I got a killer passage. So a killer passage is like some insanely hard passage that you just don't understand. It's like nuts. I don't feel like my test had that, but might have. Maybe it's just not as extreme. I think the Princeton Review does give you a lot of harder materials than it actually is. So if you're like the kind of person who wants like an extremely hard test, maybe you want to go with Princeton Review. Then the biology section I don't think was too bad, but I also loved biology, so that was fine. I'll also say my score at the end so you guys can judge whether I'm a valid source or not to even listen to. So yeah, those were my experiences. The month waiting for it was annoying. I found out the day after my birthday about my score, so it was like either going to be a really good birthday or a really bad birthday. So now about my tips for the MCAT is, well, number one, I already said, study over the summer. I do think that's essential. And then, personally, I recommend taking a class for this test, but I know some people can't afford it, and some people just are better off studying on their own. I do think having online materials is pretty essential because this test is an online-based test. You do click everything on a computer. It's not paper anymore, which I personally did not know until I started taking the class. So I do think having at least online materials is a big help because it's very different taking a test on paper and taking it on a computer. So I definitely recommend having at least some online materials, taking the test online. From my personal understanding, I believe that the Kaplan tests are they give you higher scores than you actually will. Princeton Review gives you lower scores, and that personally was like good for me because then I was never too confident about the scores. That way I wasn't like, oh, you know what, I'm fine, like I'm just gonna stop studying. I kept getting like 26s and I was like, oh my god, I cannot deal with this, like I need to keep studying. AMC I think is about right. My average did not reflect my actual score though. My actual score was higher than my average on the AMCs. So if you're not doing well, I don't think that you should, like, I was gonna not take it because I was like, oh my god, like I'm averaging not a good score. I don't want to do that. Like, why should I spend the money to take the test? I don't think you should let that keep you from not taking it. Some of my friends just were like, I'm not ready, I'm not going to take it. When I signed up for it, canceled their test, moved it. If it's that serious, I don't think you should neglect, like, it's better to move the test than to take it and not do well. But at the same time, you have to realize, why do you want to move the test? Are you just nervous? Because then that's not a good reason. But if it's just like you literally are not prepared, then yeah, maybe you should move it. And then, so yeah, that was the class versus at home. If you have the money, I would take a class. If not, I think you'll still be fine if you don't take a class. Be calm and take this test seriously, but not so much that you like literally go insane. Because I mean, I took it so seriously, I had breathing problems. So I would recommend not doing that and just studying for it over the summer. And yeah, so there's that. So I guess I should tell you guys my score so you can tell like whether this is like a score that you would want, whether you want to listen to me or not. Feel free to ask me questions about it. I'll also link a website that I'm a part of that deals with like pre-med related questions. So I personally got I don't even want to say it. I got a 36, 12 in physical science, 11 in verbal, 13 in biology. Did not expect it. I was expecting like a 30. Pretty sure my parents didn't think I could get higher than that. No one did. It was above my average. So don't take the AMCs that like strictly. Like I got a 29 on the first AMC. I was like, maybe I should just move my test. I kept taking it. My average went up to like maybe a 32. And I guess test day, maybe the tests were easier. I don't know. Also, so one last thing I want to say, when you get your test scores back, sometimes you just get a bad test. There are tests that vary in difficulty, and sometimes you'll just end up with a test that you were not meant to take. And so don't let that discourage you. That means you just gotta retake it and pray you get a good test. I'm pretty sure like there are people who had the same intelligence as me, took a different test, but got a lower score. It honestly is, at that point, it's luck, and there's like nothing you can do about that part. They'll ask different kinds of questions and different topics on exams. It's not like they'll cover this much OChem specifically on this test, and they're going to specifically ask about configurations this many times on each test. It's not unanimous. So at that point, just take what you can get, retake it if you need it. Also, don't retake if you're like, if one of my friends, or like my friend's friends, got like a really awesome score and like wanted to retake it. I don't even know. Don't. Like, they're also check like how likely it is for you to do worse. You don't want to do worse your second time. So I'm personally not going to retake it because I don't, like, I got a miracle, I'm not changing my miracle. But yeah, I didn't even tell most of my friends my scores, so you guys are special to me. Yeah, so just let me know if there are any questions, and thanks for listening. Bye!